Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So, every election cycle we hear about these models that will claim to accurately predict the next presidential election. This doesn't really take any polling into account. It just takes into account a lot of basic fundamentals, and we see them sometimes with the economic models, and then we see some like the 13 Keys tracker, which have been historically accurate that take a few other things into account. Now, I will say this. We're going to look at the full methodology in this video, and we're going to actually predict using the 13 keys. However, it's important to note that these are based on a professor's famous book that he wrote, Allan Lichtman, and he has predicted every election correctly using this since 1984 except 2000, but for some reason a lot of people forget about that, and his interpretation of them does tend to be extremely subjective. So we're kind of going to predict them through using his logic to start with, and then we're going to predict them through using what I believe to be objective reality to a certain extent, because we understand that this thing is flawed. If you apply it to 1932, I believe, it would have Herbert Hoover winning in a landslide when he lost in a landslide. So it's not entirely perfect, doesn't take everything into account, and it can be extremely flawed. So we're going to fill this out because now we have a website, 13keystracker.com, that can predict it. I didn't make the website, but somebody did send it to me. People are using it in the Discord, which you can join if you sign up for redeaglepolitics.com, which is $5 a month or just 16 cents a day. You get access to my entire catalog of exclusive, never-seen-before videos that do not make it onto the main channel. You also get Discord access as well as access to all of the articles on the website, once again, at redeaglepolitics.com. But furthermore, these are the 13 keys to the White House. 1 is midterm gains. 2 is no primary contest. 3 is an incumbent seeking re-election. 4 is there a third party or not? 5th and 6th deal with the short and long-term economy, respectively. 7 is major policy change. 8 is no social unrest. 9 is no scandal. 10 is no foreign/military failure. 11 is major foreign or military success. 12 is the incumbent charismatic, and 13 is there an uncharismatic or charismatic challenger to the incumbent in this case. So if 8 or more of these keys ring true, then the incumbent, which would be Biden in this scenario, wins. Now, if 6 or more keys are false, then the challenger party candidate, which will more than likely be Donald Trump, will win. So, without further ado, let's fill out these 13 keys. Key number 1 is midterm gains, which even Lichtman himself, which we know he has a bias to the left, admits this is false. Yes, the midterms were disappointing for Republicans. However, they did retake the House, and the only Senate seat that flipped was where you had an incumbent retire. So it's not like on the surface level the midterms were an unmitigated disaster, but compared to a lot of people's expectations, Republicans did underperform. But still, because this key has to do with the House and because Republicans did actually go out there, regain the House, this key is for certain false. Biden did not have any midterm gains where it counts. So, key number 2 is there a major primary contest, which again, he has to get 66.7% of the primary vote and delegates on the first ballot in order for this key to remain true. And it seems like even though he has challengers, even though you have RFK Jr., even though you have Marianne Williamson, these people combined are not going to be taking away that much of the vote. Even if they do in some of the early states, by the time the end of the primary is over, Biden's going to be running up the score fairly easily there. I would say this key is probably likely going to be true regardless. Key 3 is an incumbent seeking re-election. Assuming Biden is the nominee, this key is true. Now, for some reason, if Biden doesn't exactly run, Well, in that case, this key is going to be false, and this key will also likely be false under this scenario. So this is just going by the Lichtman keys. Now we're going to, at the end of this fill out here, the first round, we're going to probably change some in terms of what actually should be taken away from these keys. No third party. We don't really have a major idea if we're going to get a third party or not, because if you look at 2016, I believe, you look at the third party key from 2016, this one actually did end up being false because you did have over 5% of the vote go to a third party. This one is just uncertain. We honestly don't know. Lichtman says it doesn't look like there's going to be a major third party, but Biden has a high unfavorable rating. Donald Trump's unfavorables are similar to Biden's. So looking at it, it does seem as if we could see a third party. But as of right now, because it's the Lichtman round, we're going to say it probably is going to be true, even though I think that it should be uncertain. Key 5 is a strong short-term economy, which again, we've had technically a recession so far. However, they don't call it a recession. So again, this is a key that even they say is uncertain. The strong long-term economy is real per capita growth during the term equals or exceeds mean growth during the previous 2 terms. Just because you're getting out of COVID, that would make this key true, even though it's inflated and really isn't really showing a lot of positive impact on a lot of people's wallets when you look at things like inflation that this model doesn't fully take into account. So both of these technically are uncertain, although this key technically, based off of the way Lichtman does it, is probably going to be lean true. Major policy change, which again, Trump took a tax cut, a major tax reform bill for him to make this key true. But Lichtman already has implied this key is true, despite the fact there hasn't really been a major change in policy that's been super significant so far like that. I mean, you've seen executive orders so far, but every single president signs executive orders that are going to undo a lot of what's done in the previous administration. I wouldn't say that that's a major policy change. So this key's already been implied true, even though I don't believe it to be true. Now, key 8 is no social unrest, which again, it's weird that even though Lichtman did predict Donald Trump to win, he had this key as true, despite the fact you saw a lot of rioting during the Obama administration, just like you saw a lot of rioting in 2020, but that key, for some reason, was turned over and was false. I think this really determines what's going to happen with BLM. Is BLM going to do the election thing again, where they go out there and they riot? Because if so, it's not going to be a good look for Joe Biden if that does happen, or if they do. So again, we don't really know, but typically the social unrest does happen in the last year of the term from what we saw back in 2016, back in 2020. BLM, they're quiet, but an election year, could they come out again? We'll have to see. Maybe, maybe not, but still we'll see. Key 9 is no scandal, which again, this is also very, very subjective, because they said Trump, with the perfectly good phone call to Ukraine back in 2019, that overturned the scandal key because of an impeachment. Biden very well could be impeached in the House. It's probably not going to go anywhere in the Senate, obviously. But it's like, would that exactly turn this key? I personally don't necessarily believe it would, but there are scandals that Biden does technically have to deal with. So again, I personally wouldn't exactly put much stock into this either way. I think we're just very polarized as a nation. So key 10, again, Afghanistan withdrawal, they say that that's for some reason not an issue because it happens to be, according to Lichtman, one of the more successful withdrawals despite the bad optics, and it's pretty much forgotten, which, by the way, do you think Donald Trump, when he's out there, is going to let people forget about that? So apparently this one is lean true for Lichtman. 11, major foreign or military success. He's also implied the key is likely true because apparently we're sending money to Ukraine. Doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. Now, thankfully, he admits that Biden is uncharismatic, even though he still praises him as a decent, empathetic person, even though he doesn't even have a brain at this point. And he does label Trump as uncharismatic by saying that he's only charismatic to his base, which honestly is something that I could probably agree with to a certain extent. So, because 8 or more keys are objectively true, under the Lichtman model, Biden has already won. However, let's kind of go through this once again, because obviously midterm gains, I'll agree with that. No primary contest. I'll agree with the first 3. However, third party may happen, may not happen. The economy in the long run, or even in the short run, has not exactly been good. In fact, we've seen 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Long-term economy, I personally think that even though you might see GDP growth overall be higher, a lot of that has to do with getting out of COVID, just reopening in 2021, because that's going to already artificially inflate the GDP, just like shutting everything down in 2020 artificially decreased the GDP. So key 7, major policy change. I don't think you're seeing a major policy change in my opinion. There's no major policy changes whatsoever in my view. Just because you're signing executive orders, that doesn't move the needle. Again, social unrest, we haven't seen that so far. We could see it. We'll wait and see what happens with the BLM riots, if they happen or not, because it is an election year. So we'll see what happens. If they run with that narrative again because they believed it helped them last time around, that would obviously turn that key. And Biden's probably going to be even weaker on those riots than what we saw under the Trump administration. So number 9, no scandal, which again, it says bipartisan recognition of serious impropriety. And besides the Democrat cupcake investigation into Biden's document thing, I don't really see that whatsoever because we're very polarized. Personally, I don't think a lot of Biden's scandals in and of themselves are going to hurt him a whole lot, just like I don't even believe Trump's indictments are going to hurt him a whole lot because everybody knows they're politically motivated, they're bogus, and even though there's a lot more merit to Biden's skeletons in his closet, they're likely not exactly going to impact the election too much in and of themselves, especially with the media running cover for him 24/7. So key 10, no foreign or military failure. I think Afghanistan was a failure, I would say. I don't understand how you can look at that and say it wasn't. That tanked his approval rating significantly. His approval rating was above water, and then after that, he was like 10 points underwater a couple of weeks later. And even though it's not being talked about enough, according to Lichtman, a lot of things weren't being talked about a lot that he checked false or true for the Trump administration. So what exactly does it matter if you're going to look at these fundamentals? What he's doing is he's basically lying. He's basically twisting his own model to make Biden look good. And it possibly could backfire in terms of his predictions. There has not been a major forward or military success so far whatsoever. There really hasn't been anything in terms of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And even if Ukraine completely obliterates Russia, that really has nothing to do with us whatsoever other than, we're just like sending them money. There's been a lot of money that's been sent to countries that win in certain conflicts. It doesn't necessarily always make the president look good whatsoever. So key 12 and 13, I will keep the same. But if you look at it this way, which is the way that's more objective, Donald Trump would win the 2024 election. So Lichtman, he is kind of twisting his own model. Personally, he twisted it in 2020 to a large degree. It's a flawed model. It really is. All models are technically flawed. What matters at the end of the day is, are you able to get more ballots in the ballot box by election day compared to your opponent? And if so, if you score more points, you win. That's all it comes down to. The fundamentals in 2022 were not exactly on point. And we saw that because Republicans in many places aren't playing the same game the Democrats are. But if we do that in 2024, which Trump has said he wants to do, even the RNC is starting to take note, well, he'll have a very good shot at victory. Not guaranteed, but he'll have a very good shot. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle out